Good afternoon. Well, we start, of course, with what happened at the Congress of the People media briefing. Chaos erupting when leaders were supposed to speak to the media today. Some disgruntled members disrupted the event. They suggested that Mosiuoa Lekota had no right to address the media, considering that he's on suspension. Yes, this is the media briefing, dissolving into punches. This is what happened.
This is my father.
Mbali Thethani has some experience of boxing commentary. It's why she's wearing red, to make sure that there's no blood that she needs to wash out later. Mbali, good afternoon. I can't imagine that when you went to this press briefing, you thought you'd turn into a boxing correspondent.
Never the case, Stephen. Of course, this is something that most of us would never even anticipate. I mean, especially for COPE. So you would expect that it would be just a normal press briefing, as press briefings usually are, very calm, very peaceful. But just well into that press briefing, Stephen, of course, we saw just a man coming out of nowhere. Saw a couple of people just storming into that building, storming into that press briefing, just literally taking our mics off, that table, and essentially just getting into a punching fest. It's something that I never thought I would ever live to tell a story like this or even experience.
It is extraordinary. I mean, I can't in my mind remember party members doing something like this during a media briefing. There's been a festival of chairs once or twice, and of course that's been the ANC and most famously perhaps the Eastern Cape. But that's been in an internal Congress, never in such a public way like this.
Of course, Stephen, you would remember that just earlier on in the week we saw Mosiuoa Lekota being suspended by some party members, and of course then we saw the counter suspension coming in, of course, saying that, we're now going to suspend Willie Madisha, who is the deputy president of COPE, as well as the spokesperson of COPE, being Dennis Bloem. So it just shows you the state in which COPE finds itself at the moment. It even dates back to many years ago when actually the party started. One would say we're just basically seeing a repetition of when COPE actually started out, and it just seems that those factional battles or battles for power seem to haunt COPE, and it seems as if it's not ending or going anywhere, Stephen. Let's just take a listen to what Mosiuoa Lekota had to say when we asked him about what really went on and why do we see COPE in the state that we see it today.
In keeping with the provisions of our Constitution, my term of office as President of the Congress of the People would end at the end of this term of office, because our Constitution provides that an individual may occupy the term of office, or rather the presidency, if they have served 2 terms. And this being the position that would be the end of my 2nd term of office, unless the party decides otherwise.
Well, this is the key point, isn't it, Mbali? In a way, it's all about Lekota and the claims against him.
That's true, Stephen. Of course, the reason why we find ourselves here and we find ourselves with these 2 factional battles is because you would know that some people in the party want him to step down from his position as president. And of course, he stated there that the only reason he can be removed from his position, Stephen, is of course COPE goes to a conference, and that conference is expected to take place next year. But some in the party are saying, well, that's just too long. We can't wait that long. The reason being is that they are saying that he has undergone a number of medical procedures, he is not healthy, and of course he even went to great lengths to say, well, I cycle, I run, just because I went for an operation, it doesn't mean that I can't steer this party in the right direction. At the same time, Stephen, you know that this party has been saying it needs to renew itself. We have 2024 just around the corner. And they're saying that, well, we can't have someone like Lekota campaigning for us. We need new leaders. We need new leaders, young leaders. Let's just take a listen as well to the other faction, which is, of course, the likes of Dennis Bloem, as well as Willie Madisha, who were the ones spearheading, saying that Lekota needs to step down from his position.
What Mr. Lekota is busy doing will have a split in the party. This is exactly what is happening now. There is this ructions that has happened there at the press conference. If Mr. Lekota have listened to our advice, it could not have been gone to this level. It's very, very painful that Mr. Lekota, the reason why Mr. Lekota was suspended is because he has divided this party. Mr. Lekota went to Bloemfontein last week, Saturday, with a group of his friends, the very same people who were sitting there with him at that press conference, and they call themselves the CNC. 17 of them. How can a party take such decisions of suspending people, 17 people?
Mbali, so, I mean, it's sort of hard to know what's going to happen next, right? I mean, I realize renewal is suddenly very popular in our politics for some reason. I don't really see a road back for COPE. Do you? Is there one somewhere?
I don't see it at all, Stephen. I mean, from here onwards, COPE has been on a downward spiral ever since it came into play. And, of course, a party that had more than 30 members of parliament to now just 2, and you are heading to the 2024 elections, one would say, especially after seeing this brawl that played out at that press briefing, what are you saying to your voters? It's quite clear that they'll really be scrambling when they have to contest the next elections.
The lessons here for other parties, aren't they? You've got to define yourself and differentiate yourself from other parties in the market. There are quite a few smaller parties now. I think several others are battling to do that. But in the end, it's also about managing what happens inside. There's a reason that you've spent so much of your reporting life reporting on what's happening inside the ANC rather than on governance. This is what happens. The DA has had similar problems recently.
That's certainly right, Stephen. Of course, with this one in particular, it's quite sad when you continue to see a party that says that, like you said, trying to renew itself, trying to attract more voters and younger voters, but the internal battles within the party seem to be taking up more of their time than what it is they have to do when it comes to serving the people of this country.
Mbali Thethani, her gloves are off today. Thank you very much indeed. I do appreciate it. Our reporter, of course, was at that briefing. Astonishing scenes coming out of that COPE's press conferences.